The cars racing on Grand Prix circuits in the years after the war were conventional in design. Engines at the front, traditionally built, high-performance versions of cars you might almost see on the road. The Ferrari was typical, powerful, heavy and orthodox. Then out of England burst the rear-engine Cooper. In 3 years, it consigned its front-engine rivals to history. Sterling Moss ushered in the revolution in 1958 in Argentina. He drove a privately entered Cooper and gambled on its tires.
In the Argentinian Grand Prix, it was the first big race for a rear-engine car, I think. And we had Rob Walker's car there. So I said to Rob, no way can we change these wheels. We hadn't got knockoffs or anything. And I'm going to save the tires right through as much as possible. And the race started, and as often happens, of course, you get a group out, and I got at the back of the group, and I was slipstreaming them on the straight, so I could then go around the corner, understeering round, using all the road gently as possible. If I saw oil, I'd go over the oil, and when I came out of the corner and everything was okay, I'd go over the grass, which was relatively cool, and I just sat there, and I never tried to get the lead, obviously, until the cars started to peel off and went in, and then I inherited the lead because they pulled off. And then I can remember it so well. I'm going around, and suddenly the tread went, and these are on the fronts, which is really worrying because I could see those. And I remember going around and thinking, well, I can't stop now. My God, I'm winning the Argentine Grand Prix in this little rear-engine 2.2-litre Cooper. When I crossed the line, I just couldn't believe it.
This first victory for a rear-engine car owed much to Moss's driving skills. So it wasn't altogether surprising that few people took this revolutionary concept seriously.
Quando la Cooper si presentò, tutti noi la guardavamo ridendo, dicevamo quello, scusi, non so come dirlo.
When the Cooper arrived, we all looked at it and laughed. We said, that thing, that little squirt, such a tiny car. Looks like a flea compared to our cars. But it had lightness. Its rear engine was an absolute novelty.
Posteriore, novità assoluta.
A rear, or more accurately mid-engine car, has several advantages. It's lighter, so it brakes better and accelerates faster. With much of its weight near the center, it's easier to steer. And with the driver seated lower down, the car is more aerodynamic. The unlikely birthplace of the rear-engine revolution was a garage in Surrey, the workshop of the Coopers, Father Charles and son John. Here, with a small workforce, they turned out simple but winning racing cars. Blacksmith jobs, they were called. John was dismissed as a garage keeper by some of the grander constructors.
When the war finished, we decided we'd go into the motor racing with the 500 formula, which was a new formula that was formed with using a motorcycle engine, in other words, like a four-wheeled motorcycle, if you like. And basically, that's the start of our rear-engine car, really, because it has the engine in the back. Norton's originally wouldn't sell us engines, so we bought the whole bikes, the featherbed motorbikes, and then we took the engines out and sold the frames to people afterwards. There was a great shortage of steel after the war, and we bought all the Morrison shelters we could find, by golly. And we used to cut those sheets up and made our wishbone lugs of them, engine mounting brackets out of these sheets. And we used to use the legs to make our chassis jigs and that sort of thing. And also we bought a lot of stuff from, there was a firm in Kingston called Coley's that sold second-hand aircraft equipment, especially aircraft petrol pumps and things like that.
So the rear-engine concept came about not through some sudden inspiration, but because the Coopers built their first cars around a motorcycle engine, which, positioned near the middle of the bike, chain drives the rear wheel. They may have stumbled on their innovative design, but they had the good sense to exploit it. Their early cars dominated Formula 3, the next step was Formula 2, and the goal, Formula 1. They were helped in their task by the arrival of a 30-year-old from Australia, a man who combined an outstanding talent for driving with engineering know-how. Jack Brabham. His technical skills played a vital part in the creation of the Cooper Grand Prix cars.
John Cooper was a man who helped me greatly in motor racing here, and We struck up a wonderful friendship together, and it became a team effort between us, really.
When the car was joined to the new Cooper Climax engine, the revolution was complete.
The 2.5 litre engine Climax had good torque, and it was a beautiful, smooth engine to drive. Although it may not have had the horsepower of the Ferrari, it certainly had the reliability and flexibility and made it very easy from the driving point of view. We really had an advantage over the Ferrari in all respects. A, for aerodynamics, B, our braking was much better than the Ferrari because our car was a lot lighter.
I said Ferraris up to around 1960 were just a magnificent engine on 4 wheels. The front engine cars were still built as cars had always been built, had forged suspension parts, and they were much, much heavier than the Coopers.
We just used common sense, and what we felt was right was right. And one of our things was we made our cars strong so they didn't break. What's the point of spending all the money on motor racing and you don't finish the race? Our whole attitude was to finish the race.
In 1959 and 60, they usually finished first.
It's Brabham all the way now. The race and the World Championship are his, with just 1 lap to go. And team manager John Cooper welcomes his winner home. But there's something wrong. It's McLaren, number 9, who takes the checkered flag. There's consternation in the Cooper pit. Brabham should have come through first. But Jack Brabham, out of petrol, is still in the race. He's got to push that car more than 450 yards to the finishing line. And that after more than 2 hours of driving at 100 miles an hour. This is the sort of courage that makes champions.
Bruce McLaren, in another Cooper, took the checkered flag, but Brabham had already won the British and Monaco Grand Prix, and in 1960 would win 5 more.
The other cars roar past, and Jack Brabham pushes his way to the Motor Racing Championship of the world.
And now meet, in person, the World Motor Racing Champion of 1959, Jack Brabham, driving his World Championship winning car, the Cooper. Hope you can stop.
The old circuit at Reims saw the rear-engined revolution come of age. 17 of the 20 starters were British, and 10 of them were Coopers.
The 1960 race at Reims was probably one that'll stick in my mind for quite a long time. The Ferraris there, the 2 works Ferraris, were driven by Phil Hill and Von Trips, and it finished up a fantastic duel between us.
Thrills at the French Grand Prix start the moment the flag drops. Hill's BRM in the front row fails to start. Plantignon's Cooper rams it, Halford's Cooper goes into a spin, and Bianchi's Cooper pulls away with a crushed radiator cowl. Somehow the mess sorts itself out, though there's some hasty patching up for the pit stop to do.
I can remember going up past the pits, we were even going over the top of the hill there, 3 abreast, and it was a really neck-and-neck race, and it wasn't until about the last few laps of the race when Phil Hill was getting really desperate and I really had the better of him. At the end of the straight, I looked in the rear vision mirror just as I was about to turn right down into the pit straight and saw Phil Hill coming down the inside with all 4 wheels locked, smoke coming off the wheels, and I was able to just keep straighten the car up instead of turning in. And Phil Hill went by me, and I think finished up almost in Reims itself. And that left me on my own for the last few laps and won the race quite comfortably.
Coopers filled the first 4 places. A front-engine Ferrari would win only 1 more Grand Prix. After that, even Ferrari followed John Cooper's lead.
And that was the big revolution of 59-60, when every car had to have the rear engine like they have still today. And it was the end of the Italian constructors and the big development of the English.
And it was an Englishman, Colin Chapman, who now emerged as the outstanding innovator in motorsport. Chapman began by setting up his company Lotus, which built competition cars and went on to make road-going sports cars. But Chapman's lifelong passion was motor racing, and his manufacturing company, especially in the early days, was there to support it. Throughout 25 years in Formula One, Chapman died of a heart attack when only 54. He pioneered an astonishing range of innovations. Not all worked, but the many that did created the shape of the Grand Prix cars we know today.
Colin was gutsy, and he was very intelligent and innovator. He was a man that he transformed the face of Grand Prix racing in many ways.
He was very enthusiastic, obviously, and the people who worked for him were obviously enthused by his total energy and commitment to actually winning.
I had great respect for Colin Chapman, the greatest Formula One Grand Prix car designer of all time, I would say.
We basically go racing because I like it. I like going racing. I've always been involved in racing. I like the competitiveness of it. I like the comradeship of it. And I also like the technical fallout that comes from it. We do learn a tremendous amount from racing.
Two early landmark Chapman cars were the Lotus 18 and the 25. Chapman studied the Cooper design and improved on it. His first successful Formula One car was the 18. Called by one critic a shoebox with 4 dustbin lids, it was still more competitive than the Coopers. Innes Ireland drove for Lotus at the time. He won races in the 18, and in a later version, he even won a Grand Prix. As he helped to make Lotus a name to watch, he experienced the good and the bad of driving a Chapman pioneering car.
The Lotus 18 was, it was quite an easy car to drive. Its shape was all wrong. I could never quite understand how Colin didn't finish up making it that shape. It was a bit like a streamlined brick. In the dry, it was absolutely superb and would outhandle anything of that day. In the works cars, we had Colin's own gearbox, which was very, very positive when all the parts of the gearbox were new. Sadly, in those days, Chapman didn't have the money to renew all the parts every race. So as they got worn, I mean, it was quite easy to finish up with a box full of neutrals. The gearbox became a nightmare. It was always referred to as the queer box.
The 18 got Lotus off to a winning start in Formula One, but to gain the World Championship, Chapman opted for a radically new car and a young Scots driver, Jim Clark. In 1962, Chapman unveiled his next design sensation, the Lotus 25 with a monocoque chassis. Instead of a frame of tubes welded together, here was a chassis made as a single shell, stronger, lighter, safer. Cradled within it was the V8 Coventry Climax engine. The monocoque design with rubber fuel tanks neatly installed along the sides was soon taken up by other teams. Meanwhile, the Lotus 25, driven by Jim Clark, stormed to 10 Grand Prix wins in 2 years, giving Chapman the first of his 7 World Constructor Championships. Then Coventry Climax gave up making racing engines, and Chapman needed a new power unit.
Teams have got to rely on other people providing engines for them. And so here was the new, beautiful, shiny Lotus team that was really not going to go anywhere because it couldn't get an engine. Along in 65 or thereabouts came this opportunity to do this extraordinary Cosworth Ford engine, which remains the greatest racing engine in history, I think. I'd had a great impression of Keith Duckworth because he'd worked with Colin and we'd spent a lot of evenings drinking beer together and arguing about cars and where they were going. And so I went over and I told Mr. Ford that I'd like to have $323,000 for the Grand Prix engine. He said very simply, what will it do? And I said, well, I think it'll win a Grand Prix, maybe more, and I think there's a chance of it winning a world championship.
Keith Duckworth and his Cosworth Engineering Company set about designing an engine. The result was this, the ingenious 8-cylinder Ford Cosworth DFV engine.
With perfection, and the combination of that remarkable ability, totally applied, is produced over a period of perhaps 15 years. Certainly the greatest engine designer the world's ever seen, maybe ever will see.
When Formula Junior was announced, the rules stated that it had to be a production engine. And of the various engines that came along was the new Ford Anglia engine, which arrived just at the time that we were about to start, and looked as though it should run to high RPM, and therefore that we should be able to get a lot of air through it and a lot of power. The power output of an engine being the size of the bangs times the number of bangs per minute that you can manage to get.
Half tax exile in Paris. He came over, got in the car and won first time out, and he never looked back. Lotus Ford in Formula One at that year and the following was so dominating that I was frightened that we'd kill the sport because I couldn't see why we shouldn't win everything. So I said to Colin at the German Grand Prix that I'm afraid we'll kill the sport if we go on this way. We're just going to have to make the engine available for everybody. And he said, yes, I agree. It was a most magnanimous gesture because I had a deal with him and he could have said no. But thereafter, as Ken Tyrrell has pointed out, you could buy the Ford DFV engine, go and buy a chassis and become world champion.
Jim Clark and his consummate driving skill were key factors in Chapman's progress.
Clark stands out above all because of his ability to drive any kind of car and win. And Colin Chapman and him are the best of friends, you know, like brothers, really. So you knew with that partnership, you were halfway there to start with.
I did get very, very close to Jim Clark. He was, I would say, my best friend I've ever had. We got on terribly well together. I understood exactly what he wanted and so on, and I think he understood exactly what I meant, and we conversed on the subject. Plus, we were very good friends off the track. And this is the tragedy of motor racing, is when you do get close to a driver and there is an accident, of course, it hurts you so much more.
Innovation brings risks, and at times Chapman's cars had a reputation for weakness and unreliability.
Basically, Colin's concept of a racing car was that if it didn't brake, it was too strong and you should make it lighter. And theoretically, he thought a racing car should do the race and then fall to bits as it crossed the line. So the cars were always flimsy. In 1959, I had 4 complete brake failures. And I mean the complete brake failures, I mean just nothing.
So in his own way, if you finished, a race, a 200-mile Grand Prix, and then in the cool-off lap, the wheel fell off, mission accomplished in his own way. If the car would have lasted another 200 miles, it's overbuilt, it's too heavy. So that's how he played it, but, he got caught more than once.
Yes, I should think so. Yeah, if you can get it on time.
Colin Chapman had a lot of charm. He could get people to do virtually anything. If he was scheming on the cars and saw a way of doing something, he'd quickly sketch it out and say, this is what I want, you know, rub his hands together. Come on, let's get it on the cars, we're away, you know. He always seemed to get what he wanted.
Aerodynamics were another Chapman speciality. He experimented with high-mounted rear wings to improve his car's performance, not always successfully. These days, though, a version of these aerofoils has become a standard feature on Formula One cars.
Can we set the slow running up a sniff? How difficult is that? All right, no, we'll do that in the paddock. Right, you can get out again now. Is it all back on? Right, it's all back on again.
Oh, wait a minute.
Isn't it quick?
Colin Chapman had come up with another innovation, and they were high wings. We tried it at the French Grand Prix in 1968 in Rouen, and it was fantastic. Clearly, even on the third lap out in the car, even though I didn't know the circuit, the amount of grip that you were getting from these devices was phenomenal. I'm not sure what happened. Coming into my third lap in qualifying, I approached the fast downhill section just before the pits there on that street circuit in France, and the back of the car snapped away from me.
And then it just went and started to go backwards, but it didn't spin completely, and it went halfway, and then started to go backwards, and then it went the whole turn again, and next thing I saw was the wall here.
Whether it was a mistake, or whether, as some believe, and I do, that this tall rear wing up on stalks suddenly fell over backwards, and as it went over backwards, of course, the downforce incidence from this position turned to lift in this position as it went over backwards, and may have picked the back wheels of the car off the ground. But anyway, the result was that I hit the entrance of a chateau, which was wrought iron gates. Fortunately, I didn't hit the wrought iron gates, otherwise I would have been like cheese through a grater. I hit the retaining walls either side, probably at about 120 miles an hour. And all I could see was this dust settling, and the picture, I thought it was heaven actually, because it was a picture of this beautiful chateau, this drive with the chateau at the end of it, and cows grazing in the fields. It wasn't until Colin Chapman, who ran across the track, because it was right opposite the pits, came and shook me on the shoulder, saying, what happened, what happened, what happened? But I realised I was still around.
Oh, dearie me.
Brandy, I think.
Cool, you were white. You're better now. You were pretty white 10 minutes ago. I think you ought to sit down. Sit down in the chair.
I understand, actually.
Really?
Saw that wall coming up.
Chapman was competitive to his fingertips. On this occasion, he was quick to try to turn Oliver's crash to his advantage, with some gamesmanship at the expense of his rival, Bruce McLaren.
You didn't hit anything, did you? You haven't actually hit anything all the time when it's span. No, you didn't hit anything.
All I'd done was spun at a hairpin. All that slow lap.
You see, the whole of the rear suspension is in fact hung on that gearbox. And if that breaks, well, that's it. But then they're all on the same basis. Hey, Bruce, look, I think I better tell you, the gearbox bell housing broke, and you know the whole of our rear suspension's hung on the gearbox, same as yours. And it's just broken in half in the middle. You know, the bell housing's got a hell of a load in it, if you think about it. That's all that's happened, it's just broken in half. I'm bringing Graham in, I'm not going to run him like that. You better have a look and see if there's any cracks in your bell housing. Do you think we ought to have time in?
This incident demonstrated how sometimes Chapman's innovations were at the ragged edge of technology, but his determination and inventive genius saw him through most problems.
These things tended to make you a bit, think a bit, but still you drove the cars as hard as you could, and I always had implicit faith in Colin, purely because of his innovative ideas and appreciation of what went on in a racing car. He had tremendous understanding.
At the end of the 60s came arguably Chapman's most enduring legacy. He realised that only sponsorship of his Grand Prix team could pay the enormous costs of running it. His decision may have offended the traditionalists, but it secured the future of Lotus and other teams, and supported Chapman in his ceaseless quest for technological innovation.
There'd always been sponsorship, in a sense, from the oil companies, from the tire companies. That gone on since time immemorial, and was really what paid for it at the top level. Then suddenly they brought a tobacco company in, and that changed everything.
When the cigarette people, they stopped them advertising on television completely, Colin Chapman took out a competition license in the name of Gold Leaf Team Lotus and sprayed the cars red and white like a gold leaf packet. And really that was the start of real money in motor racing, really. It happened then.
The sheer creativity in the 60s of all those young Brits who were doing it on sheer enthusiasm have now really created in this country a British motor racing industry second to none in the world.
Chapman was unique. I think if he'd have been alive now, he would have gone on to won more Grand Prix, and the likes of Ferrari and McLaren would have been second place to someone like Lotus.